There's going to be a lot of Q&A here in just a few minutes. But it can't be too hard a question because it's Saturday. I don't like to think on Saturday. So, what's supposed to do all that? Anyway, we are a 60-year-old company. My grandfather actually bought the company from another gentleman who he originally had they allegedly had a horse-drawn tank, and that he dipped 5-gallon buckets and poured it into heaters. So the company actually is just probably 100 plus years old. I am third generation, which is very typical in our industry. There's not too many, other than convenience stores, there's not too many guys graduating from college looking to get into the oil industry. I mean, there's hardly any first generation. We, however, focus on the industrial, commercial side. We deal with states, municipality, trucking companies. We're not in the convenience store business per se. We wholesale. That is kind of our focus in the industry. We sell mainly in Mid-Atlantic, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. North Carolina is our core area, and that's where we sell most of our bio. We do a little in South Carolina and Virginia, but mainly North Carolina. Been in the biodiesel business since 2002. At that point, the Southeast, there was not, I don't know if there was any biodiesel production of any sort at the time. And we originally bought a car from West Central Soy, which is now RAG. And we brought it in. At that time, the soybean associations and the farmers were very gun-ho, excited about biodiesel. So that's how we started. That's what we started with. And there, at that time, you started something on B2, and then you worked them up to B5, and it took a long time to sell 20,000 gallons of biodiesel at a B2 to B5. It took a while. And then eventually, we got into the B20s with the state and the counties, trucking companies, and then retail, and really started to roll. Today, retail is kind of the king when it comes to bio. They can use tremendous volumes of biodiesel when it's priced right. And when it's priced right, I mean, you can take one truck stop can use 20,000 gallons of B100 a day. I mean, it can really take you over the top. In order to talk about the my job, I guess, is to talk about, as a distributor, what are we looking for in biodiesel. It's probably important to understand how distributors operate. There's two basic groups: the retail folks, which is the C-store guys, and then the commercial, which I'm a part of. The retail guys, they sell gas and diesel, obviously, at the C-stores, but really, they're into hot dogs and Pepsi-Colas. That's what they sell. They have lots of different revenues for money, for profit. They'll buy bio, but it has to be pretty clean. They're not interested in doing RINs. They're not interested in bio credits. They're not interested in having to go 100 miles to pick up a load, or they just want it clean and simple. They would prefer to have it already blended. Then there's guys like us. We operate, we're in a penny business, really. We don't have a lot of revenue. We can't sell soft drinks off trucks, right? We sell fuel and we sell gasoline. That's what we do. So we are really always looking for other ways to enhance our margins. That's where biodiesel and ethanol come into play. But what we do, we wholesale quite a bit of fuel to national distributors. So I see a lot of financial statements, and a lot of these guys are operating the gross profit margins under 1%. I mean, a lot of guys are 0.75% and 0.5%. And it's just amazing. And there's moving millions of gallons a day, some of them, and just making hardly any money. But so they have to run lean and mean. They have to be very efficient in what they do. So when you're trying to sell to some of our guys, we come across sometimes very cranky. But you got to keep in mind, for every $100 we can get in, quite often we have 75 cents or 50 cents of that $100 to operate our business off of. So they don't have a lot of time. They're really understaffed, and they're really looking for every efficiency they got. So they're cranky most of the time. And what we look for may be different for other people, but this is kind of my list of what I am looking for when I talk new bioplants. To me, BQ 9000 is very critical. It's not about the quality. Obviously, if you don't have BQ 9000, you can make quality product. It's about marketing. When I sell to a new guy, he put biodiesel in his tank. Now, anything that happens from then on, if the windshield wipers break, it's the biodiesel's fault. I'm sure a lot of you know. Everything is the problem with biodiesel. Their fault. So, in fact, one time, I had a trucking company we got. Apparently, the management knew they were going to have some anti-bio folks, and we put it in and ran it for 4 months before they announced it to the public. Had a big PR hoo-ha and all that. And once they had that 4 months, no problems. Once they announced it to their staff and to the public, and here come the problems. No power, this break, blew up the motors, all this. So it's obvious it's all in their mind. It's not anything to do with the product. Quality specs. First thing I do is ask for a C of A from the guys. And first thing I do then is look at the date. And inevitably they give me a C of A that's 6 months old. I mean, to me, that's a red flag right to begin with. You have to give me a 6-month-old certificate analysis. Something's not right. You should have some C of A's within a few weeks at least. So that's the first thing I'll look at. And then basically the monoglycerides is a big deal. Try to keep that in the 20 to 30, but my soapbox really is the cold soak. I like to see the cold soak around the 100 mark year round. And that kind of gives some guys some problems, but that's my number. And if I were selling and I had a biodiesel plant, I think I would send several C of A's instead of just one. Because when I get a C of A, I'm thinking that's the best they can do because obviously they peek through the patch. So if if you send me one and said, hey, this is the worst we've had in 3 months and here's the best we've had in 3 months, I would respect that because really in the long run, you're not trying to sell a load of biodiesel, you're trying to build a relationship. Because in this business, it's up and it's down. It's priced well and it's priced where it's almost impossible to sell the product from a diesel competitive perspective. And I do understand that, wait. The other big thing is finished product storage. A lot of bio plants don't have a lot of storage for finished product. Remember, we're in the penny business. We got to be able to get in, get our load when we need it, get out, and we got to move. And they don't have pumps that pump like we need them to pump. I mean, in the fuel business, we go to a fuel terminal, 15 to 30 minutes, we've loaded 7,500 gallons of fuel and we're on our way. We can't afford to sit there for 3 or 4 hours loading a truck. We need to be able to move, get in, get out, get it when we need it. And I realize this stuff costs money, and when biodiesel's 30, 40 cents below fuel, right, it's not a big deal. You can sell all you want to sell. Kind of like the old soup Nazi on Seinfeld, Get out of my line, I sell this guy. You sell all you want. But when products get tight, when it's only a half cent or maybe it's 10 cents above diesel fuel, these little things make a big difference on selling to people like me. Your location is critical to understand for me and or for you to understand your location. Do I have somewhere that I drop to close by you where I can backhaul your bio back? Or can I get diesel fuel, splash it at your facility and carry it to a customer? All those things are critical to me. Then the feedstock. In North Carolina, we have to use low cloud point product in the wintertime. So we need a plant that can produce low cloud, and then we can accept high cloud in the summertime. Can you transition between the two and produce the type of product that we need that will work? And then the biggie, especially for small plants, is the price structure. And in a year like this, where it's difficult to compete against diesel fuel, because at the end of the day, that is the competitor's diesel fuel is trying to beat the diesel fuel prices, and not necessarily beat the next bio guy. It's the competitor's diesel fuel. So how do you price your product so that we can beat diesel fuel prices? And hedging, which I didn't put up here, but that's kind of what we look for is ways that you can price product for me other than today for the next 3 months, so I can know I can compete against diesel fuel. In fact, in June I bought the majority of the product I need for the rest of the year because the pricing was right. I was able to go ahead and forward sell the RINs We do like to do quite a bit of that before it's other end. So I have my differential to diesel fuel locked in, so I know that I can make money on it. Then the quality of the RINs. A lot of RINs, and there's these lists floating around for these obligated parties. And if you're on the list, you can get full value for your RINs. If you're not on the list, well, it's up to the sharks to pay you what they think it's worth. And people like me have relationships with obligated parties, and we can get your RINs approved over time. It's a lot of hoops, but it takes quite 3 to 6 months normally. But we can get you on the list so that you can get full value for your RINs. And then the big one really to me is willing to work together on accounts. That's something we look for. Because there's really two groups of biodiesel buyers. There's ones that only buy it when it's cheaper than diesel fuel. They're easy to get. And then there's the group that buy it for more environmental reasons. And that's the ones that you need because they'll buy from you when things are the darkest. And so you have to work together to get those guys on board and to grow that side of the business. And quite often, the biodiesel producer has better relationships with those kind of people and industry and customers than a guy like me. Take a quick break here.
Hey, slow down.
So question, excellent.
That list that you were talking about, is that just like a North Carolina or
No,
just this little area, or that's
each obligated party, say Exxon, BP, they have a list of approved biodiesel plants that they'll buy RINs from. That's it. In fact, now they only have a list of approved people like me that they will even buy from. So you got to get on that list, and then you can get full value. Yes.
And you're saying that those companies, through working through somebody like you can help them find out.
Yes, I mean,
because of the quality or whatever.
Because the relationships we got, say, hey, we're buying from this guy. Because we buy, and I didn't say this, or we buy a lot of biodiesel at certain times. I mean,
but is the BQ 9000 a prerequisite
for me?
Okay.
It's BQ 9000 really is a marketing tool for me. When I go up and try to get a guy, he can say, hey, we buy BQ 9000 product. He can Google it. Mike's Pretty website comes up, tells him all about how great BQ 9000 is, and he feels comfortable that, hey, he's doing the right thing. Yeah. It's not really about the quality of the product to me, although I do feel more comfortable with the BQ 9000 plant. And it's expense, right? I don't know what it costs. I'm sure it's very expensive. But when things are not rolling and it's not great, I think it's well worth it. That's when it pays off.
So all these points pertain just to road use and diesel fuel, or does it also the same thing pertain to heating oil?
Heating oil, we don't deal in heating oil that much, but yes, I mean, it's basically all the same product. Okay, I thought, being, I don't know a lot of stuff, that I'll talk about some of the issues with the biodiesel plants and the large volume we deal with, from guys who make millions and millions and millions of gallons a year to guys who make a truckload a month. I prefer to buy from the local guys. I think long term that is where this business is going to be. The big guys are going to go more into renewable diesel, and the local production is where I think long term this industry will stay. But the big guys, we have to deal with them. And they're difficult to deal with. Mainly what they ship is by rail cars, and rail cars are just horrible to deal with. I don't know if any of you guys have to deal with the rail industry. They're difficult to deal with. And the plants, they won't tell you like you can't get a car shipped on Monday. The best you will do is they will ship one to you in a week, right? And you have to buy months in advance quite often, and they'll give you a week range, which they may or may not hit on shipping your product. And then you got to deal with the rail company, which may or may not get your car to you in a timely fashion. I mean, I've had them sit for 2 weeks and I can see the car. They can't get it unloaded. Then when they get to your site, depending on what kind of deal you negotiated, you got 5 to 7 days to get it unloaded, no matter if they're 2 weeks late, 2 weeks early shipping your car. And if you go over your time, it's about $100 a day what the rail companies charge you if you don't get them unloaded in a timely fashion.
Is that what demurrage means?
Merge, yeah.
Demurrage? That's a penalty you pay for not unloading fast enough, is what that word.
That's correct.
Interesting.
No matter whether it's our fault or not. Yeah. And an 8 cars not so bad, but if you get backed up 10, 15 cars, 25 cars backed up because they didn't ship them when they're supposed to, it gets to hurt pretty fast. And then quite often it's a cash flow issue with rail cars because a lot of the guys, it depends on what you negotiate, but it's 3 to 10 day pay from the time they invoice you, and they invoice you when they load the car. So quite often, I mean, I've had cars sit out there in America for 3 months, just sitting there trying to get them into me to unload. Typically, they're pretty good 10 days from the Midwest to me, but quite most of the time I've paid for the product before it gets to me, which is not fun. And oddly enough, with these big companies, we have the most of our product quality issues are with larger companies. And and every year we get a rail car or two come in that we decline. And when I call up the customer service and talk to them about it, they're not surprised. It's not like, wow, that never happens to us. It's like, okay, we'll come get it. So obviously it's not the first, not the first one. And I really think they're making fine product. The problem is the rail cars. I don't know if they put other products in them when they leave us, or it's the conditions of the rail car which they're delivered in. This is the problem. And sometimes we know it's bad because we can't even pump. The pump won't even pull the product out of the truck.
So you do the quality testing of the product?
We did visual.
Visual.
I mean, because you don't have, there's not a lot of time. At certain times of the year, and when the price is right, we may sell 2 or 3 rail cars a day.
But the product quality issue is mostly a cold weather phenomenon?
No, that's a whole nother issue. The product quality is I mean, we can make it in the summertime and it'd just be a foot of just something on the bottom of the rail car.
So is there some kind of like reporting agency? I don't know, like, that really makes me mad as a biodiesel producer. Like, that infuriates me that kind of product is trying to be put into the market. You know what I mean? There's no recourse for you to be able, other than just saying, hey, come back to get it. Man,
Such is life.
It started out at BQ 9000. What happened to it?
That's the rail cars. I have someone say that before. They have to go in. It usually happens worse when things are busy. I think they don't do the cleaning like they should. You get towards September, August, September, this time of period. They've been rocking and rolling all summer. And I think they really don't take the time to make sure the cars are appropriately clean. Then cold weather issues with rail cars. Most of the rail cars are insulated. They come across the Midwest, Nebraska. It's cold. It's cold. And so we get them sometimes, and then they'll be partially gelled up. And that's a real problem. Now the small biodiesel plants, they have issues too. They're up and down. I mean, it seems like we are in the penny business, so we got to go, and when we need it, we need it, and it's kind of annoying when you try to go to get something, you got planned, you got everything lined up, and then something breaks. I'm sure they can't help it, but that goes back to the tanks. They don't have property cash flow also, but they don't have the storage to have my product ready and waiting on me instead of me waiting on the product. And then feedstock issues. It seems like a lot of these small plants are always waiting on feedstock. You can't get feedstock. Truck didn't show up. They just don't have enough, I guess, feedstock storage as well. And quite often some of them, I mean, it's a cash flow issue. They don't even make the product until I say I'm ready for one. And we can't operate like that. Like I said, we've got to roll, and we need it when we need it. Then there's always logistical issues, and quite often the smaller plants, we use them around the rail cars because there's so many rail car problems that I like to have the local guys that I know I can get a truckload around the rail cars, because if they're 2 or 3 days late, I still got to have customers that need products. So local guys, I like I always buy from them, but in my business model, their purpose is to feed around the rail car. I mean, if I could buy it all local, it would be fine with me, but that's just not practical. The feedstocks are not here. And that's it.
what is the product that you're mostly selling? Are you selling 5% blend, 20% blend, or just the biodiesel fraction?
But you know, I sell it all. I'm not biased, but majority of it is B20. Sometimes you know, when prices are right, we wholesale a tremendous amount of B99. It just varies every year. It's always different.
On the contracts, it mentioned that y'all had like with the state of North Carolina. Can you tell a little bit about that?
But there's really not a whole lot to tell. I mean, they put out to bid the contract, and we bid on it, and then you know, sometimes we win it, sometimes we don't.
What's their volumes now, annually?
By contract, I can't really disclose any of that type information.
I got maybe a couple of questions around what you sell. In my market in Texas, we only have one diesel terminal, and it's owned by a company, Electrical Brothers, who own a lot of biodiesel plants, whereas so all the B5 in our market comes from the terminal. How does that play out here?
It's a problem. The problem out here is that we don't know what's B5 and what's not B5. And that's a big problem. I mean, there's two pipelines that come into North Carolina. North Carolina is fed mainly by pipelines. And one of them does carry B5, the other one does not. So you have to kind of know which terminals are what. And quite often, you know, we'll do a blend of B15 technically. We'll put 15% bio in it, knowing that there's somewhere around 5% bio. So to do a B20. But it's difficult. We don't know if it's B5 or B4 or B3.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then on the B20 side, who are we selling that to? And what are they doing about warranty issues, warranty issues with OEMs for the B20?
I don't think they're worried about it. I mean, I don't think it. We sell a lot of trucking companies.
Selling it to people who are then reselling it at retail, or
Yes.
construction companies, or
There's certain.
has B20 pumps just open to the public, no sign in anything, or?
Yeah, you have to have a sign in North Carolina and all the states. I believe now you have to have some level of signage. But yeah, I mean, particularly last year when biodiesel was cheaper than diesel fuel, I would say 75% of diesel fuel at a retail pump was sold as B15 to B20.
Okay. The reason I ask is in our state, Austin had the most number of stations in the country with biodiesel at 36. Now we have 0. We have nothing above B5 in Texas at the retail pump. And no way to B20 at all.
Here they don't publicize it. If it makes sense, they'll slap a sticker on it and rock and roll. In fact, there's one trucking chain now, truck stops, that now is installing B100 tanks at their truck stops, and they have a blend mechanism.
Sorry, they're doing that in Texas as well.
Yeah.
Truck stops are called B100 tanks and then blending.
The blending that, as it needs.
I have two questions. As we look to find and engage new, let's say, customers that are basically individuals, right? Some guy with a Jetta, right? I would say that I would feel, if I was the guy in the Jetta, my question would be, this gels in cool weather and this dissolves my fuel lines. What do you tell people? How do you engage on those questions? Because I don't want to sell stuff that's going to wreck somebody's car. Like you said, you can sell fuel once and then not have a relationship. And so I want to be as honest as I can be with people and say, look, your warranty will probably be void in your Jetta, and you might have an IP seal leak in 10,000 miles, and you're probably going to have a tank of jelly in November.
We don't sell to customers, to consumers that really blend over B20.
Okay.
We sell some B99, but they're really other convenience store chains or other oil companies that are blending it down to B20 or B10. So we don't really have a lot of warranty questions anymore. A lot of them that are warranty sensitive, they'll run a B5. But we don't, this doesn't really come up.
Sure.
Can you tell us, is most of your volume right now through the state contract, or is it through retail and commercial, like trucking?
It's probably 50-50 right now from a municipality, state, and then the regular commercial. I mean, we got quite a few trucking companies that still will run it.
Because the price is really competitive.
Because price is not incredibly competitive, and
So why are trucking?
at some point, we make a conscious decision. It's on the B. Right now, there's no blenders credit. To a certain extent, we take the hit on the blender's credit, so because we believe in bio. So sometimes I'll lose money on bio in order to keep the guy on the product. And hopefully the dollar will come back. If it does, great. If it don't, well,
That's what
I've lost money before.
Just to answer that fellow's question, I mean, in regards to the state contract, I think it's about 10 or 11 million gallons of B20 that might be moving through the state contract. And NCDOT is a really large user. They
At
have-
one time, the biggest in the nation, single point.
Right. I don't know if that's the case now.
10 million gallons of B20 per year is what you're saying?
More or less. I haven't looked at it very closely, but I don't think it's dropped off too much.
Do you do mostly splash blending, or do you have an injection
No,
system?
we do all splash blending. The southeast, there's very little, there's no big plants in the southeast, right? So, and so that from a freight standpoint, it's probably the highest, well, Alaska, some other places maybe, but as far as the continental US, probably the highest bio in the country, because the freight from the Midwest or Northeast is 25, 30 cents. Now, they're starting to bring in import, and it may change that market, but as it stands right now, I mean, we'll probably be the last area in the country to really get into the injection blend. Where's one, right?
Yeah.
There's one, but they don't have product. They very seldom do any product.
My question was about splash blending too. Do you have any problems with fallout, the biodiesel falling out of the fuel, or any kind of issues with customers injecting splash blending?
Now, we like to blend put the bio in first, and then we go to the terminal. I mean, the terminal, like I said, they're loading 7,500 gallons in 25, 30 minutes. That lane. So
Pretty good turbulence.
It is some serious turbulence. And we do load the bio first to ensure that turbulence, and also the tube. You know, a tanker has these tubes where you hook to underneath that go into the compartment, so that there's not B100 in those tubes if it's wintertime.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you're hearing from the obligated parties any desire to move towards QAP RINs.
It doesn't come up. I've asked them several times. I mean, you see them traded. I don't know if you guys know how RINs really trade. I'm sure. I sell a lot of RINs and actually buy a lot of biodiesel through Yahoo Instant Messenger. You'll get asking bids on RINs all day long from different people where they're at, and you don't see a lot of these. Hey, these are QAP RINs. You don't see it in the market. I think it's a good thing, and I'm sure it does make a difference at some point. But when I try to get a plant approved, they really don't give me a hard time about it. They call the plant, and I really don't know what kind of questions they ask the plant. But it didn't seem to be a real big deal. Yeah.
What's a QAP RIN?
There's these quality processes out there that you get this third-party company to come in and say, hey, this biodiesel plant is producing biodiesel, and these RINs are like they're supposed to. They're doing everything they're supposed to do. It's supposed to offset some of the fraud that was going into the industry.
So you've mentioned that EQ 9000 is important. Is it a deal breaker for your supplier? So if someone doesn't have EQ 9000, but they have quality fuel, they have reports back a year with every batch.
It's not a deal breaker per se. It depends on what the market's right. I mean, if biodiesel's selling at 30 cents under diesel fuel, and I got to get as much as I can get, it's not so much a deal breaker. I mean, but when it's the other way around, yeah, I mean, price is not everything, but yeah, I mean, I prefer to stay with that. I like to support the program in general and encourage people to go that way. I think it's good for the entire industry.
The pricing, what do you base it off of, or what? Currently, what you usually paying for B99?
Well, I should have spent more time on that. I really don't buy it like that. Typically, what I do is buy it to a differential to heat oil that's trades on the screen. That's the way I like to buy it. And like the last time I bought some, it was only made sense to buy it for about maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then it went like 6 weeks, and it didn't make sense from a price perspective to buy it. So what I do is I look at where RIN values are, and then you have your biodiesel price, and then you got diesel fuel. So you got three core components. Sometimes it's a blender's credit you got 4. So all those have to net out to a discount to diesel fuel as what I like to see. Then I can really sell the product. Now, I have some customers that will buy it no matter what, but that's kind of what I shoot for, is a discount to diesel fuel. So I have to pick a point where diesel fuel spikes up, RINs kind of hold up, and usually biodiesel's relatively stable. So then I can hedge the product against the diesel fuel and sell off the RINs. Like say, I've sold RINs for December for product that may be coming in October, but I'll go ahead and forward sell the RINs to obligated party that I'll supply to them in December at a set price. I've already set the price. I already got the fuel, the biodiesel hedged against diesel fuel, so I'll know where in October when I get that buy, where my net cost is for that product.
So you said that you sell biodiesel, maybe B20 blend to a lot of trucking companies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if any of your customers or their customers, if anybody is trying to brand or tell their customers, we're using biodiesel and that's part of who they are. Like, does Whole Foods put biodiesel in their trucks and tell their customers, we're cleaner because we have biodiesel in our trucks? Do you have anybody who's active?
We have had that in the past, not so much now. It's usually, and I'm sure you can find on their website that that's what they do. They don't push it like they used to. Used to was a big deal. They would push it, but now a lot of companies just have made that commitment that they're going to buy it, and they definitely will buy it if it's cheap. You know, I try to get them at least stay on B5, and sometimes I'll take the hit to keep them on B5, knowing that when the market's right, I can get them back to B20s.
How many different biodiesel plants do you buy from at most? And can you name them?
Probably 10.
10.
Yeah, I mean.
Can you name that?
Well, I would prefer not to, but we buy from a lot of the big ones, and we try to buy from all the BQ 9000 in the Mid-Atlantic region, which is not very many.
So is Piedmont Biofuels your favorite supplier?
No, who Piedmont Biofuels is. Who are they?
They make biofuels.
They make, yeah, I didn't know they made product.
Are you able to sell B20, for example, as a premium product, or is it always a discount product?
Well, like I said, there's two groups of people. You got more environmentally conscious folks that we can sell to them as a premium. We don't if we don't have to, but they will buy it no matter the price. I mean, a few cents is not going to deter them from buying it. Then you got the retail or the group primarily that if it's not cheaper, they're not going to buy it. Period.
Break down your customers in those two groups, 60-40, 90-10?
In terms of
volume.
Well, the best thing is probably in terms of number of customers, it's probably 60-70% environmentally conscious versus 30-40. However, in terms of volume, it's probably, when things are right, 80% retail. I mean, you can get one truck stop can use 20,000 gallons of B100 a day. I mean, that's if you convert it into. I mean, they'll move 100, and it's not uncommon for moving 100,000 gallons of diesel fuel a day. So I mean, it doesn't take, the retail side is just insane what they can move in volumes.
Well, suppose the truck stop around that's doing that.
All the truck stops are doing it. When the price is right, they all the chain truck stops do it.
Which two bins do you put your state contracts in? Are they just...
They're more the
price-
environmental conscious. They're going to buy it no matter what.
They will. And it's a year-long contract or a 6-month? How do you run those contracts?
It's a well, you never know what they're going to do in the next contract, but typically it's a 2-year contract with a 1-year extension. It's how they do almost all their fuel contracts.
Okay.
Do you have DOD?
I have some DOD.
The biodiesel piece?
Some of it.
Are you selling on contract in other states? Because I thought it was kind of novel that North Carolina has B20 on the state contract.
We have attempted, some of the other states are hesitant to really get into it for whatever reason. We have in the past, though.
Do you have any idea why North Carolina is more into it than other places? Why we're going to buy it at any price customer? I mean, coming from...
Because of anti-well.
Yeah, been a big push. Yeah. And early on, a governor, two.
Well, and NCDOT, there was leadership and they are the largest user outside of the school districts, and they haven't been as gung-ho.
But it's kind of air quality.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of population pressure, and our air quality has been in non-attainment, and that is a big.
Oh, you guys are in
driver.
non-attainment?
Oh, yeah, it's a
24
big,
counties.
it's a big driver for biodiesel sales. So the governments of North Carolina, all the, the zoo and the airport and the state fleets and the bus lines are all highly incentivized to improve air quality.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't, the EPA is gonna cut off our highway funds.
This is ozone non-attainment that you guys have a problem with? Wow.
And incentivize like monetarily, or incentivize like, you better do this or you're gonna be in trouble? Like, what do you-
So no, I mean, the EPA comes by and says, hey, Triangle, you guys are in non-attainment, what are you gonna do about it? And when they come back next year and they say, what did you do?
Right,
And they
right.
say, well, what we did is we moved all of our buses to B20. They say, great, now here's your air quality, what are you gonna do about it? If they come back and you say, we did nothing,
Yeah.
then you can say goodbye highway funds. And when you say goodbye highway funds, it's like, surprise, NC Department of Transportation is the big, recipient of highway funds, a big burner of bags.
Actually, what's happening nationally, I mean, and this is going to affect North Carolina certainly, is that in many areas, like, have very few counties now in true non-attainment. We're in maintenance status, and after 3 years, theoretically, that goes away, you're allowed to do maintenance, so you still get, we take advantage, or we have the benefit of getting funding from NCDOT, congestion mitigation air quality funds, and that has funded like some of Lyle's stuff, and funded this vending terminal that didn't actually work out. But anyways, we've been able to use it, and so that's a benefit to North Carolina to get more biodiesel in the marketplace. But what I'm saying, the point I'm trying to make is that there is a big push. EPA is talking about potentially tightening up the standards because the health effects, I mean, truly are not being reflected in the current standards. They're not strong enough. But there is a tremendous amount of industry pressure to not tighten the standards. And so if they do tighten the standards, most of North Carolina will actually be in non-attainment. Not 24 counties, but something like, I don't know, a lot in regard. That's probably true across the U.S.
So Omaha's going to be in non-attainment next summer. So, and we have basically nothing planned. So I'm curious, has anybody here seen any bending down of their problems going into, is it working? Did anybody write a white paper about, look, we've done B20 and now our ozone is starting to?
Well, this is complicated because actually what's happening now with the higher emission standards for 2010 and newer, there isn't a big air quality benefit from the criteria pollutants.
Okay.
So, biodiesel is a really good, from an air quality point of view, in older vehicles. And that's really difficult for me as somebody who can provide funding to reduce emissions. So, and there's controversy as far as NOx. I mean, I think it's been put to bed more or less, but there's been a lot of, information or testing that said that NOx is actually slightly elevated with the use of B20. But actually, our DOT funded studies here and found that that isn't actually true. So there's a slight decrease. But if ozone is your issue, then NOx is a problem. But if PM is your issue, then, well, biodiesel is obviously still around that.
In general, air quality has improved in my lifetime. And in general, air quality continues to improve. It's actually now, that can also be helped by things like the Great Recession. But in general, air quality is getting better over time. And it's something that I think we need to, of course, we're one player in it. We also have a clean smokestacks law that helps. There's all kinds of hands on deck to make it happen. But it is something, when we sit there in doom and gloom with things like peak oil and climate change and all of these things coming at us, we do need to realize that we've been getting better air since 1962, year I was born.
Most of that's not really from the fuels, it's from the technologies itself. When the catalytic converters came on and then the diesel particulate filters came on and the standards, I know the CAFE standards didn't work out as well as we had hoped, but there was a series of technology leaps that occurred in the automotive industry from the technology that led to huge gains in air quality. But fuel helps. The lower sulfur fuels that we have now compared to 10 years ago, the amount of sulfur in a lot of the fuels was extraordinarily high. That's been cut more than in half. So that was a huge savings right there.
good.
All right, one more question for Brian. Let's see. Brian, thank you so much.
And I think you've already addressed this, but I came in late, but I wanted to hear your take on the QAP and if that's going to become a bigger issue in the future.
It probably will. I don't see it as an issue today. I don't see a lot of folks asking me, hey, are these RINs QAP? I don't see a lot of trades on the RIN market of people saying, hey, these are QAP RINs. So ultimately, I think the mechanism by which to get your product from your plant approved on these obligated parties lists is not incredibly difficult. It just takes some time.
Thank you so much, Brian.